Once upon a time there was an old goat. She had 7 kids. She loved them as much as only a mother can love her children. She was going to go into the forest, bring herbs and branches for lunch. She called all her children and warned them to be afraid of the evil wolf. He often pretends, but you can immediately recognize him by his rude voice and black paws. The kids understood everything and assured their mother that they would be very careful. The old goat set off calmly. Little time has passed. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and shouted in a rude voice that the kids should immediately open it. But the kids from the rough voice realized that it was a wolf. They answered that it was not mother's voice. Her voice was kind and thin, and this voice was very rude, which means it was a wolf. Then the wolf went to the merchant and bought himself a large piece of chalk. He ate it, and his voice became thin. He came back, knocked on the door, and in a thin voice asked the kids to open it. The wolf put its paw on the window and waits. And the kids saw her and answered that the mother's paws were not black, but white, which means it was a wolf. Then the wolf ran to the bakery and asked to give him some dough. The wolf anointed his paw with the dough. The villain approached the door for the 3rd time, put his white paw on the window and knocked. They saw the kids that the paw was white, and thought that it was their mother. They opened the door, but there was a wolf in front of them. They got scared and began to scatter in all directions. One kid jumped under the table, another on the bed, the 3rd on the stove, the 4th into the kitchen, the 5th into the closet, the 6th under the sink, and the 7th hid in the grandfather clock. But the wolf found them all, opened its jaws and swallowed one by one. Only one thing he did not find: the youngest, who hid in the clock. Having eaten his fill, the wolf left. He stretched out on a green meadow under a tree and fell asleep.
Oh no!
Soon an old goat came home from the forest. Oh, what did she see there?
Uh-oh!
The door was wide open.
Oh no!
The table, chairs, benches were overturned. The wash basin was broken. Pillows and blankets were thrown from the bed. She began to look for her children, but she could not find them anywhere. I called them by name, but no one answered. She went up to the clock, and in response there was a thin voice of the youngest kid. She took him out of there, and he said that a wolf came and ate everyone. How the goat cried for her poor children. Finally, she left the house, and the youngest kid ran after her. She came to the meadow, so a wolf was lying by the tree and snoring, so that the branches were trembling. She looked at him from all sides and saw that in his swollen belly something was moving and floundering. She guessed that these were her children, and was very happy that they were still alive. She told the kid to run home as quickly as possible and bring scissors, a needle and thread. Then the goat cut the belly of the wolf with scissors, and from there one kid stuck out its head. And then the others jumped out, all 6, and nothing bad happened to them. What a joy it was! They began to hug their mother, jump and dance. Then the old goat said it would be nice to teach the wolf a lesson while he was still sleeping. They pulled stones and stuffed them into the wolf's belly. An old goat sewed up his belly, but he did not notice anything, never even moved. The wolf slept, got to his feet and felt such a thirst in his belly that he decided to drink water from the well. He barely approached the well, bent down to the water, and heavy stones pulled him to the bottom of the well. 7 kids saw this and began to dance for joy with their mother. That's how they taught the evil wolf a lesson. My grandfather planted a turnip, and it grew big, very big. Never seen such a turnip in the villages. And so my grandfather went to pick a turnip. Pulls, but cannot pull. The grandfather did not know what to do. And that way, but it will not pull out in any way. Then the grandfather called the grandmother to pull the turnip. An old woman came, grabbed her grandfather by the back, and they began to pull the turnip together. The grandmother is for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they just can't pull it. It's just some kind of trouble. The grandfather pondered and realized that it was time to call the granddaughter for help. And they began to call the little girl at the top of their voices, so much so that the whole village trembled. The granddaughter came running, took hold of the grandmother's skirt, and again they began to pull the turnip. The granddaughter for the grandmother for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they cannot pull. The old people were upset, because such a turnip disappears. Then the granddaughter decided to call her dog, Bug, so that at least she could help pull the turnip. Bug came running, grabbed her granddaughter by the handkerchief, and they began to pull the turnip together. A bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. They pull, but they cannot pull again. The grandfather and grandmother were even more upset, because the uneaten turnip will disappear. Suddenly the bug barked and ran away. The dog returned not alone, but with a cat. She grabbed the beetle by the tail, and began to pull the turnip all together. A cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, but not stretch. The old people were upset with their granddaughter. They will not see a turnip. Suddenly the cat ran into the barn. She was gone for a long time, and she returned not alone, but with a mouse. The grandfather and the woman, and the granddaughter and the beetle, began to ask the mouse for help. She wagged her tail, squeaked twice, and then grabbed the cat's fur with her little paws. And again they pulled the turnip together. A mouse for a cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, and pulled the turnip. And so the grandfather decided to share the turnip. He took half for himself, gave a third to his grandmother, a little less to his granddaughter, a piece of the beetle, a half of a piece for a cat, and a very small crumb for a mouse. The animals were offended by their grandfather because they helped in the same way, and he divided the turnip dishonestly. A year has passed. Grandfather planted the turnip again, and it grew larger than before. For a long time such a turnip has not been seen in the villages.
Cool.
And so my grandfather went to pick a turnip. Pulls and this and that, but will not pull. The grandfather did not know what to do. And I decided to call my grandmother for help again. They began to pull the turnip together. The grandmother is for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they just can't pull it. Then the grandmother called her granddaughter. The granddaughter came running, and they pulled the turnip together. The granddaughter for the grandmother for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. Pull, but not stretch. The grandfather was upset and went to ask the animals for help. He called Bug, but she only turned her face away, wagged her tail and ran away. Grandfather found a cat, and she climbed onto the roof of the barn. Then the old man went to the mouse, but she did not listen to him either. Then the grandfather realized that the animals were offended by him for not honestly sharing the turnip. After all, without a mouse, a cat or a bug, grandfather cannot see a turnip. The old man thought, collected his thoughts, and went to the animals again. He apologized to the bug, asked the cat for forgiveness and promised the best piece of turnip for the mouse. Then the animals agreed to help their grandfather.
Okay.
And they began to pull the turnip together. A mouse for a cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, and pulled the turnip. Baba baked turnips. For a long time such delicious turnip has not been seen in the villages. And the grandfather divided the turnip equally, a piece for himself, grandmother and granddaughter. A bug with a cat and even a mouse were received each piece. Everyone was happy. So, they lived in peace and harmony happily ever after.